Oh, nice. And people are, we had a Neoni event yesterday, and now people are playing their music all the time on, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, people like it a lot. So people are discovering artists on Hangout, so that's
That's
pretty
what we
cool.
like to see. All right, so
Because there's no AI, so it's all real people you're
the
meeting.
last one. Well, that's it, right? It's almost like an identity system.
Yeah, that's kind of the point. That's why we have so many locks around that identity.
Yeah, as usual, you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, hopefully not too many decades ahead of the curve this time.
I'm tired of being ahead of the curve too. So
Well, that's why we're doing this podcast, so other people can catch up and get ahead of the curve also.
so what's something that's coming to be more near term that you and I maybe think is banal or prosaic, but I think is important for the audience?
In Well, it's let me see. I sent you some things like the VO3, not VO3, Genie
Oh,
3.
you know what? We could talk about it's the best of times, it's the worst of times essay you sent me about how AI is actually
Mm.
not producing 100x engineers or something like that.
Yeah, in Silicon Valley, some engineers are being forced to use AI by their CEOs and by their investors and by their LPs. And so they're feeling a bit resentful when they try it and it's not very good.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question. Well, can you sort of like give the high level of the argument and then I'll give the counterpoint?
Yeah, so basically they're being forced to use it sometimes usually by the LP through the CEO. And one of the reasons is, oh, maybe it's to help them have a good story for fundraising. And it's like maybe sometimes a bit almost fraudulent to pretend to be doing AI. And people are calling him saying, hey, can you pretend to do AI so I can get funded? And the other argument is that they're actually doing it to make the engineers feel weak, to actually give them a sense of insecurity. Like AI can do your job for you. You better start using it, or you're not up to snuff. Don't go looking for another job or asking for a raise, unless you're 10x more efficient with AI. And so that's a bit malicious, actually. And anyway, what is clear
This
is
is
that
so
anyone
toxic. I love it.
And anyway, anyone using it realizes quickly like it can save you some typing in very specific areas that are basically DSLs, is what I'm realizing, like SQL, HTML, but it does everything else and maybe unit tests, but like it's very not useful and goes off on tangents and you have to spend more time. I mean, the biggest fact that I think is interesting is you feel like you're 20% more efficient with using AI for coding, but actually, if you measure the time, you're actually takes 20% longer. So I think that's pretty interesting. And you're
Yeah.
dumber and you're dumber at the end because you don't know what the code is or how anything works.
Okay, so the summary is there's pushback for using AI tools in Silicon Valley because engineers don't feel like the tools are helping them.
Or even if they do feel like it, that's actually inaccurate. It's actually taking
Yeah.
longer. In any controlled study, they found that it actually takes longer.
Yeah. So here, I think that that's true, right? I think that that's true. And let me give the counterpoint about why
Uh,
it's also not relevant. So the LPs, the venture capitalists, um, they're not very sophisticated. They actually don't know what programming is, or if they do, they haven't done it in 20 years, and so it's an abstract thing. And the thing that they're observing, which is accurate, is that the market for CRUD apps, which is basically like a user interface on top of a database, has evaporated for third-party developers in places like India.
okay.
Uh, so every like
Yeah, it's hard for me to tell. We didn't ever outsource Facebook
yeah,
and Lyft. We
every middle
outsourced
market.
coding to India,
Yeah, yeah,
like some shitty app.
exactly, right. Some shitty app. Okay, so
How are these shitty apps making money? Like
just
how
hang
like
on a
why would
second.
people pay for a shitty
Just
app?
hang on a second. So 20% of programming is the kind of programming that you're talking about, where you work at a Silicon Valley company and I'm just throwing it out there. I'm using 80/20, so Pareto.
Mm.
20% is what we would call like artisanal programming, where there is a challenge that hasn't specifically been solved before and that you need to apply your genius to solve that challenge. And you do that through writing poetry in a language that few people read. Okay. And if you do that correctly, there's massive leverage to be gained. On the other side, 80% of programming that gets done is basically building stuff that people have already built in some kind of proprietary context. So, for example, there are hundreds to thousands of tools that are built for operations inside of companies. Where
For operations.
yes, for operations. So it's not
Yeah. We
not
had that
like
at Facebook. They were all built inside Facebook on Facebook platform, and they were
exactly.
perfect. They were excellent. They
Yes,
like did the job, integrated with Facebook. It just was amazing.
yes, exactly. And
Good
so
UX.
yeah, so there are that is the bulk of programming work in companies that are not so they're basically like if you're not Google or Facebook or Apple, the bulk of the programming work that like a Koch Industries chemical company, so like chemical companies and mining companies and all the refining companies, they all use software.
Yep.
They're sophisticated participants, and because they're the margins in a chemical or manufacturing company are much lower than in a software company, so they can't justify paying 10, 20, 30, 50% over rack rate for software development. That's like if you're a Silicon Valley engineer, you can go here, but if you're an engineer in Illinois working for a chemical manufacturing company, you don't get paid as much. And that work is just making internal apps. And those internal apps are typically made by an Indian development team. And there's a communication and timing gap. And so
Yeah.
the rate of improvement of those apps is bounded. And what AI has done is it's enabled the people at those companies who make those kind of like bullshit internal apps to be 10 to 100 times more productive because all they're doing is connecting some kind of very basic web-based interface, like an intranet style interface, to an internal internal database. So they have like, and they're making tons and tons of those apps. And so about 18 months ago, the Indian outsource firms that I had worked with to help companies make this kind of thing, you can think of like private equity dental practices. Okay, they all use software. It's not software that's built by Google engineers. It's software that's built by Indian engineers. And it's not that it's necessarily whatever. I don't give a fuck. So I didn't want to say the Indian engineers suck, but they kind of do. So basically, like these kind of apps are now built by AI. Moreover, the kinds of people in the companies that can vibe code these kind of apps has increased by a factor of 10 to 100. So it used to be the case that if you're Cheryl in marketing and you wanted an internal tool to access some database, you had to like go and talk to the engineering team and they had to schedule you in with the outsourcing group that would make that tool. Now you can vibe code up your own tool. And then there are what's called finishing engineers now. So there's businesses that will take your 80% done vibe coded tool and do the last 20% for you for like $5,000. I can link one.
I'm pretty skeptical of this too, because at Lyft, there's always been tools where marketing wanted to like access some data, usually like people's emails, and the engineering team and product specifically, I mean, there's tons of tools that do this, like these random marketing tools. I can't remember the name, like Blagoobly and Blabloobly. They have those weird names. And so marketing says, okay, let's use this tool, plug into the database, write our own little hacky version of something to get the data and UX. And engineering and product like hated this.
Yes.
Wouldn't ever allow it. Wouldn't ever allow access to the database.
Yes, but in most companies,
because we'd have to support it, and obviously it'd be buggy, leak data, insecure, like literally would be a huge risk to both the product and the security of the user's data. So we like didn't allow it. So they would ask for resources, and we would try to figure out how much to build for them. And usually they'd like over ask for all this other stuff, or like, you know, everyone's email. That would be pretty bad. We ended up like building projects that would like give them access. We had to build our own version of these external tools that we controlled and could set rules around.
Yes.
And so I don't see how, you know, AI coding can help with that, because these people can't code it.
Your paradigm
don't give them access. Engineers wouldn't give them access.
Your paradigm is totally wrong. So at every company
Right.
that's not in,
that was Lyft. That was Lyft.
At every company that's not in Silicon Valley, engineering and product are a second tier bitch to sales and marketing.
That's great. So what you're telling me is that with AI vibe coding, all of these big companies are going to rape their product to death. That it's just going to be sales and marketing completely running rampant over security, privacy, and like product. And
That
they're gonna the shitification is gonna like skyrocket. It's gonna go
yes,
all the way to zero
yes.
in
So
like 6 months.
yes, the bet is that the internal tools velocity of eating and enshittifying all the products is going to be offset by the foundational models getting better at security. That's the race, right? It's like, are the foundational models going to get better at security before the enshittification of the marketing and sales tools? Like, for example, I had another person tell me a story about how at their 2,000 person company in who gives a fuck state in the US, they replaced Workday. Okay. Workday is like an HR bullshit thing where you track employees and all their paperwork and all this kind of thing. They charge a lot of money for it. It's an asinine business. If you ask me, it's perfect for some kind of internal tooling thing. And you can use these sort of low code, vibe code builders to like replace it, where it processes all your paperwork and does all this kind of nonsense that Workday currently does. I'm telling you, man, this is the takeoff in AI. And the open questions are, does it provide value at the frontier? Arguably, it does not, because basically the data set that you have, the language that it reads from at scale is the intelligence of the model. So if you take all the writing that has ever happened on the internet, because it's a normal distribution for intelligence, and then your AI is only going to be as smart as the average person. But if you somehow sequester out all of the smart people writing, then your AI is going to be smarter, but then you don't have as much data to train on. So you have this tension. And so at the frontier, if you're like a top 1% engineer, the AI is always going to be worse in terms of doing frontier stuff, because you're smarter than it. It will be able to do like basic stuff, like build me a website.
Yeah.
And
that's AI is like a super mid.
Yeah, it's I try to stay away from using IQ because I keep getting
I didn't say IQ, I just said mid. It's like
no, I understand. I'm going to make a comment about AI, but IQ, but I'm qualifying it. So I try to stay away from IQ because people think that I over rotate on it too much, and I actually think it's a bullshit metric. But the AIs are functionally, if you understand the IQ paradigm, they have like a 95 IQ. And so they're like not useful for doing 120 plus based work. So I think what you're saying is completely correct, that engineers at the frontier are not able to use AI.
Security is a fundamentally hard problem. It's adversarial. And it's not clear the AI would do very well in that. Like, security is a frontier. You're talking about how AI can't do frontier. Securing an app is frontier. You can follow maybe some best practices, but it's always frontier. It's always humans on the other side being very creative to exploit your app. I think the best example actually just happened. Someone wrote a viral draw a fish app, and he said he vibe coded it. So it was just like, oh, draw a fish. And so they released it, it went viral, it was covered in the news. And then within hours, it got hacked. And people were like hacking it, and people were counter hacking it to try to save it. And it was like obviously going to happen. And the guy wrote up a whole write-up on Hacker News about it. So it was on Hacker News, and then it was hacked on, and I was also on Hacker News.
There's sort of two comments here. The first comment
always happens. Everyone's vibe coded app gets hacked, 100% of them.
Again, if you have a product manager who vibe codes a public facing app, it will get hacked because the security model for the vibe coding apps is not good. However, if you're an internal tools team that is vibe coding apps for your internal customers and they exist inside of your company, whatever that means, and they're not going viral to the public, there's a security through obscurity thing that's happening, and your apps are more or less not being hacked. That being said, the bulk of the security issues in the industry is a mass problem. It's not a quality problem. So there's this idea that hackers are like super like edgy, weird, whatever, sitting in a basement somewhere, thinking of really smart ways to break into companies. That is true. There are people like that. They're called APT teams or, TAO at the NSA. But like the vast majority of hacking, 99.9%, is just bots functionally trying a dictionary of attacks that are well known against an attack surface that's massive. And you can use AI to do a lot of the quote unquote cybersecurity work to secure these apps. And then yes, so you'll have a situation where the most valuable thing will continue to be hacked by smart human beings, but the like general case will not be able to be hacked as much by the bots, because the computer systems that are doing the hacking on behalf of humans are not sophisticated. They're basically like, let me try this SQL injection attack that worked in 1998 against.
Yeah, there's automated port scanners that help with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's functionally how it works. Like every time that I have been asked to look at a company that's been penetrated by the Chinese Communist Party, almost every single time the way that they got in was through some very known, obvious security hole that for whatever reason of policy, usually it's the supply chain of software development. If it goes from this person to this person to this person to this person, and so you can write policy to secure that supply chain so that you don't create like certain kinds of bugs. But what happens is, for whatever reason, somebody goes on vacation or their wife is pregnant or something, the two nodes will switch. And so then your policy doesn't work because there's an assumption that gets created over time among people about what you will and will not get from the previous version. And then there's an assumption about what you're responsible for shipping versus somebody else. And that's when those things get introduced. And then because you're constantly being scanned, it's not really scanned, but you're constantly being scanned. Eventually one of those things works. But it's not like there was like a specific Chinese team in Shanghai that was like, oh, let's target, Dun & Bradstreet. It's like, no. They like set up CNC servers all over the internet, and then they're constantly hitting every single computer port on the internet to see if they make a mistake. It's a great strategy, but it's a mass-based strategy, and AI can definitely be used at a client like Dun & Bradstreet to fight against this. And then there are security models that are very resilient to these kinds of attacks. So believe it or not, one of the largest smartphone manufacturers in the world, their computers that make all of these phones have never been hacked, despite the fact there's hundreds of thousands of them inside of these foreign supply chains. And so like asking the question about like, wait a minute, what are they doing?
Wait, there was a Bloomberg article about how the chips are hacked.
Which chips?
The iPhone chips.
But like, what do you mean? What do you mean that iPhone chips are hacked?
I'll find the article.
Yeah. So, because I'm talking about specifically the computers that make those chips.
Yeah, this one. Oh, the computers that manufacture the chips?
Yeah, there's hundreds of thousands of computers that make the line.
Oh, that'd be kind of crazy.
Yeah. So the fact that they're not hacked is really interesting. The chips themselves can be hacked for sure.
Oh, sorry. It wasn't Bloomberg. It was Business Week.
Yeah. Are we... Anyway, do we believe in Business Week? Anyway, I'll have to take a look at it. But my point is like...
Bloomberg Business Week. Yeah, I sent it. Yeah, Apple says it's not true, but in 2018 there was a famous story about that.
There are definitely like what are they called? Hardware vulnerabilities that you can get. I can't.
Yeah, and then there's a ton of
because it's a subscription only. So just that.
Sorry, it doesn't load.
No, it's a paywall thing.
Oh, okay. You can read Apple's response to it.
I'm sure the response is
that one's not paywalled.
I'm sure the response is we use a lot of vendors, and sometimes our vendors get blocked, and because of reasons of speed and proprietary data secrets, they weren't allowed to use our whatever security system. I'm sure that's what they said.
Yeah, well, here's the link.
That's actually true.
This is big news. This is very controversial in 2018, and there's a ton of news though happening in AI specifically though. Let's see.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Where is it?
But just to summarize for everybody who was watching, it is the case that frontier, quote unquote, traditional 10x engineers are not 10x more productive with AI. It's the mid-level 50th percentile engineers who have to do bullshit work that are 10 times more productive.
But again, the article is saying you can't really be 10 times more productive. It may be like 10 times faster to type something you would have typed anyway, but typing is like 10% of your job at best when you're
Okay,
a
so again,
programmer.
most companies don't care about bugs or security so long as it works. And so those people were going to put out shitty software anyway, and now they're putting out 10 times more shitty software. It is
But
a,
no, 10 times more lines of code is not 10 times more software.
I'm telling you, I'm talking to teams all across the Midwest. For the first time in their careers, they're being blocked by product and marketing, not the other way around.
They're engineers get blocked by product all the time. Engineers are always saying, "I want to do this stupid
I have a
idea," and
bunch.
the product's like, "That would be
I
stupid.
have
I'm blocking you."
several engineering leaders who've told me that one of the marked shifts that they've seen integrating AI into their workflows to make these CRUD apps is that product and market are now the blockers in terms of they've run out of ideas. It's not usually it's engineering that has to wait for some engineering process to be done, and now engineering is basically like overstaffed. And what they're saying is
We've solved software. We're now like out of ideas of software to make.
in some businesses, yes, right? Like I think that is like part of it is you, in order for you to understand what software to make, you have to get feedback from your customers. And so at some level, you're not waiting for the software team to be done. Now you're waiting for the like product team to be done with talking with customers or releasing new features and seeing what happens and this kind of thing. Again, I don't think these are good apps. I think that they're just business apps for like chemical companies and manufacturing companies and all that kind of. This is not like Google is not writing 10 times better apps, although they might be.
And it's apps they would normally now buy from a vendor or build it
They
themselves.
used to contract with Indian outsource firms, then they brought it in-house. Now those in-house teams are sitting idle because they're running.
What if they had an Indian team, they brought it in-house, and the in-house people are just way more efficient and smarter and did it faster?
So
like with AI.
There is part of that. There is part of that. But not that much faster.
I think you save a lot of time, easily 10x actually, if you just make the right wise decisions about how to do something. Because when you're talking to someone in a different time zone, you're gonna just from doing a different time zone, you already are 2 or 3 times slower because you send a message, they don't reply back immediately. They reply back the next day, and then you don't reply back immediately. You reply back the next day. And so like a 3-line conversation takes 1 minute, takes 3 days. And that's why you can easily be 10x, like 3x faster, just by doing things in the same time zone. Not even in this house, but like in the same time zone.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am saying that the way that these apps
I'm saying what you're saying is believable,
yeah,
but maybe not because of AI.
Again, I guess we don't know, but I'm hearing that the engineering teams that are onshore, sitting at corporate headquarters, you know, the guys that sort of show up and kind of loosely define a spec and then go home, to your point, they're just waiting to see what level of bugs come back from the outsourced teams. Those guys are now writing their own apps, and so it's going 10 times faster.
Yeah, and they also don't go like off for like 2 days doing some random thing that was not wrong because they misread the English that they sent and they have to like start over.
I completely agree. And then your app is really just a copy of the app from the company down the street because those guys sit next to. I totally understand.
And instead of building 50 features that they don't need because they were unsure about stuff, they just build 5 features because the people are in the US and they see the people working and they can say, I only use these 5 features. We don't need.
I think it's very generous to say that they build extra features. I would say more like they take the exact most retarded interpretation of whatever you give them and deliver that.
I've experienced stuff like that.
I've experienced all of it. It's absolutely horrible. I totally get it.
But it's like exactly the wording of the. Actually, that's what Claude is actually impressive about. You'll tell it, oh, build this thing, and it'll say, well, actually, you should do it this other way. And sometimes it's right, which is like impressive. Usually, it's just completely wrong. But still, sometimes when it's right, you're like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Well, yeah, and if it's a 10x speed up, right, just being right 3 out of 5 times is going to be a massive improvement.
It's not a 10x speed up, but that's funny though. What if? Okay, how about this? Do you think it's still a 10x speed up if you use Cerebras, which puts out tokens at 1,000 tokens per second? Is that a 1,000x speed up of coding, Michael?
I think so. There's a very interesting.
Like, why don't they all use Cerebras then? So you get
Hang
all
on a
your work
second.
done for the month in 2 minutes.
So that is a thing that's happening. There's a challenge with this because you have to use a different paradigm.
Today's podcast brought to you by Cerebras.
No.
AI
Yeah,
chips.
it should be. It's brought to you by SourceGraph because AMP code is the thing that people are doing this with. But they basically have figured out a way to get agents to like incrementally put their work into an MD file and then basically can run through the loop. And so you can go away and then come back and it's done and it works and it passes all the unit tests.
That's the Devin vision, but I hear it doesn't work. Like it'll spend
No,
6 hours and like $10,000.
doesn't work, but there's this like there's this kind of like tongue-in-cheek version of it. I don't really remember it for this podcast. It's in a different context in my brain, but basically like that people are starting to do this and it does sometimes work. I think they're still doing it for toy apps. I don't think that they're doing it for production internal apps, but maybe it's starting to work for production internal apps as well. I wouldn't sleep on this. I think that for me, the fact that all of the OG artisanal coders in Silicon Valley say that AI sucks, while all the VCs who are just basically investing on vibes and like transiting information on vibes are being like, AI is amazing, everything is blowing up. I think the reality is that the bullshit apps getting written faster and with higher quality and better fidelity, it's kind of like a self-evolving system. Eventually it's going to come for the people at the frontier, but that's just kind of like, that's kind of my thing is they're kind of like on a train station and they're looking and they see the train in the distance and it's going really slow. Like, yeah, the train's far away. It's not here. It's really slow, but the train is like accelerating towards them.
You feel the AGI, Michael? Do you
I don't
feel
think
the
AGI
exponential of the
Yeah,
AGI?
so I just had this conversation. I think there's a difference between writing traditional software with AI agentic tooling, making better agents, and then there's somewhere in between. So I don't think it's the case that every person is going to have like a her style OS that does every single thing that they do. I think it's going to be more like her style OSs or agents will build 10,000 tools that I use. And so the amount of software that gets written will like increase, but it won't be that there's like there won't be like 8 billion individualized AIs. It's not like we're all going to have a sentient Rosie the robot assistant. I don't think that's going to be a thing. I actually don't even think they'll become sentient because I personally don't see a path to sentience, but that's
I don't know if it matters. A lot of people think that the existing ones are sentient.
That's more of a
they talk and they have a voice, and
yeah, there's
a lot of people will consider them.
Yeah, there's some like so there's a huge philosophical problem with all this, which is basically like, well, is the AI sentient or not? And then you get a bunch of tests and then you realize that human beings don't pass those tests. And so then you're like, well, these people aren't sentient. And then like you say like, well, do these people have agency? And you're like, I don't really know. Then you get this whole thing about like midwit coders. So the AI and the midwit coders develop the same level of programming, but like the midwit coders can't go and work for Google to make frontier stuff. But like, do the midwit coders really exist anymore?
Is Google doing frontier stuff? Like looking at, Google
I don't know.
Restaurant reviews, like is that
I thought
frontier
Google
stuff?
Okay, so I thought that the Google Clio whatever thing where you could
Genie
where it
3?
live generates a real world that they
Genie
released.
3 looks pretty cool.
What was that?
Genie 3?
Yeah, Genie 3. I thought that was pretty neat.
That is pretty cool. I do want to ask you one thing. This idea that the AI is going for the frontier coders, is that like a real prediction, or is there a bit of like emotion, like a bit of like jealousy, revenge, like, oh, I want those like Silicon Valley coders to not have so much power so that they get automated away first?
Oh, I don't care.
Oh, okay.
I don't care at all.
I think for some people, they have a feeling of that. They're like,
yeah. I don't have
like a journalist. Like, don't tell me to learn to code. Like,
yeah, I don't have an inferiority. I don't have an inferiority complex in that way.
Okay.
I fully accepted when about 10, 15 years ago that I saw this thing where basically like you lived above the API or below the API. And so I said to myself, okay, I never want to be below the API. And at the time, it was basically like, I don't want to be a guy that's being told by the TaskRabbit API to go fix somebody's sink. I want to be the guy that's writing the TaskRabbit API to tell people that's fixing somebody's sink. And so like for me, it just became internalized as stay ahead of the robots. And my assumption was over time, the robots, in a very loose term about what robots means, they would just do more and more and more. And that you just gotta, at every moment, you just gotta figure out, where you're gonna add value. And as a result of asking that question over and over and over again, where am I gonna add value? I came up with this whole, model of like propositional versus procedural versus perspectival versus participatory information and what is valuable. And so like when you can digitize the first three, then participatory information becomes really valuable. And like one way to think about this metaphorically is there's only one Panama Canal. And so if you can control the Panama Canal and extract rents, you'll always have a job, even if everything else in the entire world is automated. And so there's always these physical bottlenecks that exist, right? Like there's Strait of Hormuz, there's the Strait of Gibraltar, there's the Strait of Malacca. So there's like 7 or 8 currently like on the ocean, like bodies of water that if you control them, then you can make a lot of money, and nobody's going to go around them because it's so much cheaper to go by water than any other thing. And you could say, oh, well, they're going to dig another canal, but like setting that aside, there's only like 8 of these bottlenecks. And so the fact that there are physical bottlenecks informs that there are other kinds of bottlenecks. And so you just look at, okay, what is it about this physical bottleneck? Okay. Like there's like a yellow garnet stone that can only be mined at a mine in Utah. And so like you can't mine more of that stone by finding it elsewhere. So even
if we write more software faster?
No, I understand. What I'm saying, more software faster is just digitizing propositional information faster. Yeah. And so what you're doing is you're making knowing stuff worth less because anyone can know anything, but you're not making the experience. Like there's only one president of the United States at a time. And so like if your job is qualified or predicated on having been a former president of the United States, there's only like, I think maybe 5 or 6, right? There's only like 5 that are currently living. So like only 5 people could do whatever that next job is. I don't know what it is. And this is a hypothetical, but there's all kinds of everywhere you look, there's this. And then the other thing is that, and this is topical for me because it's something I'm going through personally. Every business where AI is coming in and eliminating entry-level workers, so like financial analysis in investment banks, is transitioning back into an apprenticeship model. And so you're having this situation where why should you, as the person with the participatory information, who's an expert, who's 70 plus years old, tell anyone how to do this? It used to be you would try to have as big a team as possible and you teach everyone below you how to do it. But at the point where you're responsible for all the learning and development, it becomes an apprenticeship model. And so like traditionally, this would be like father to son, or if you don't have a son, you take on your daughter's husband would like take over the business. I see.
They do that in Japan.
They do it everywhere. In ancient Rome, that was what adopting a son was. So you always see like, and they adopted this son and blah, blah, blah. And they know
the president of Nintendo was adopted son.
Yeah. So they don't ever talk about why it's basically like civilization is made by fathers for their daughters, but like, we don't explicitly write that in a lot of our history. And so you don't see it, but there's
it's not made by women, civilization.
No.
Because men aren't so civilized.
No. As soon as you put women in charge, the civilization crashes. It's like every single civilization in history is the same. There are no matriarchies, right? It's like not a thing. And any sort of like women-focused longhouse civilization, and they tend to occur in the middle of the world because it's the hot, so everyone has access to resources. They're very easily conquered by patriarchal civilizations. So they just don't. It's not a thing. Sorry. It just statistically it wasn't. I mean, maybe in the future it will be a thing, but just historically hasn't. So if we just look at sort of like historical means reversion, it that won't be the case. But anyway, back to AI. Getting rid of all the entry
Well,
level.
history is written by the victors, so maybe that's true right now of like the last couple thousand years of history. But humans have been around for hundreds of thousands, millions of years.
Yes, and there's no history in any history of any text that we've found from some long lost civilization about a multi-century civilization that was run by women. Which is like
Yeah,
not a thing.
but you're defining it through like when civilizations take over, they burn all the books, right?
I understand, and randomly we find shit. So for example, like there was like all these, like some guy in Egypt was digging a well and he finds a cache of scrolls or whatever. So it's not entirely true what you're saying. It's kind of like you can sample all of the texts that were ever written, and so you get a sense of everything that was there. And then historically, when you're like digging and stuff, you can say like, oh, there was a civilization here. Well, let's find out about it. And so like if you look at everywhere where there's in the whole world, we can kind of say like this civilization was here, and then previous to that was this one and this one and this one. And so you can start to create a map. And it's not like there's these holes that are missing for civilizations that were run by women where all their books were burned. It's just like not a thing. Anyway, I don't really care. Like we can argue about Aristophanes. Aristophanes wrote about this like 2,700 years ago. Like it doesn't. This is like an old problem. It's like not a thing for me. Like I personally have come to just.
I think the Native Americans had some matriarchal societies.
Yeah, I have no idea. Right? It's like they didn't survive. It's just like it just doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. AI.
Back to AI. It's going to an apprenticeship model. And I think this is very interesting. All right, now let's do our roundup. I want to hear what's your
So Genie 3 looks really cool. I actually kind of like the idea of exploring a world in like a way that I couldn't or no one could. Like a speed bike under fireworks over the Sydney Opera House. Like it'd be kind of cool. Or like some kind of like, oh, what if you're like exploring a deep sea battle made by I heard it doesn't do multiple character interaction well. It's more like static environments.
So there was a thing that was basically that Unreal Engine and this thing were going to merge temporarily, because right now these things don't have a sense of independent entities, but that eventually,
yeah, they were originally trying to do things with World like three generation with Genie 2, I think, but with Genie 3, they're doing pure frame by frame, and they're finding there is consistency. They didn't have consistency before, but now they're trying it with frame by frame, and with enough neurons, it actually has consistency. So it's unclear. I think they're going to keep going, but I think it's going to hit a wall. But I'm surprised how far they've pushed it. So
yeah, I don't know.
But I think it's fun the way it is. It doesn't need to be consistent. It's pretty fun just being inconsistent, right? I don't think I can't imagine they wanted to actually replace real simulation or reality, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think I don't think that it's terribly hard to do some kind of ray tracing analysis on your frame by frame generated scene to look at all the other entities and then like look up like the MMO.
But you can't do analysis because there's no 3D. It's all 2D. It's just pixels.
It's not really true because you can look at a 2D picture and extract a 3D map from it. So
yeah, so you can use another neural network to turn it into maybe a 3D thing, but that's not even using ray tracing. That's using the model to turn it into 3D.
Again, so you take a 2D, so you generate a 2D representation of the world. Yep. You at the same time use a neural network to translate your 2D representation into a vector space.
Right.
And then you look at the vector space and see if it has all of the independent entities like an MMO, and then basically fill it back in.
So, yeah, but then what do you do for the next frame? The next frame is from frame to frame. You're throwing away the 3D space. The next step.
My understanding is that this is a pipeline and it goes around and around. And so the inputs to the next version come from the outputs of the previous one. And so you sort of move the pixels to the correct space with the vector space in order to drive the inputs. I'm pretty sure this is going to get solved in the next 12 to 18 months.
So this is a link to a desktop computer that NVIDIA said they were going to release months ago, maybe a year ago, and they still haven't. It's supposed to be better than a Mac, but it's vaporware for now.
I think it's a problem when companies now announce things in advance because I think it used to be the case
I
that
agree.
there was
I
a
agree.
lack of demand for product and that you would just create marketing and then that would allow you to raise the money and then you could do the supply.
I
Now I
agree.
think it's actually there's a supply problem.
Yep.
And so NVIDIA announcing in advance that they were going to make a desktop better than Apple is just like Apple's like, we're fucking Apple, fuck NVIDIA. We want the access to fabs to make our own desktop thing. So TLDR, Apple announced their last quarterly earnings. They're going heavy into AI. What does that mean from Apple's perspective? It doesn't mean building a frontier model. It means building better MacBooks.
Oh yeah.
Everybody who's
They're
running,
gonna do super chips with like.
yes, everybody
Okay.
who's running
When
a
was
MacBook.
that announced? What was that?
So Tim Cook said that Apple is going to like change up its entire AI thing and blah blah blah. And then if you speak to people on the street, they're like, okay, how does Apple do things? Everything is about the platform, which is a physical object. So their entire business conceptually is around selling more physical objects. And so the thing that the Apple nerds have understood. So for example, I'm running.
Yeah, they're good at hardware. Yeah,
I'm running OSS.
they're bad at software. The software sucks again. It's really bad.
Again, they're not bad at anyway.
I can point at bugs in their app. That's bad.
I totally understand. I understand.
Totally
they were
bad.
able to ship an update of OS 10 every year for like 30 years, like clockwork. And it was.
And they switched their software from running on one CPU to a whole different architecture seamlessly. Shockingly good. That's impressive.
I can't even like.
But they're filled with bugs. It's terrible. It's terrible software.
I understand. But the bugs are always at the seams, and the seams require like a product person as opposed to an engineering person. So anyway.
Yeah, but they're good at design. It was all they put designers in charge. It's embarrassing.
I think that they were good at Steve Jobs was good at design, and then he had a bunch of people that could execute. And I don't think that like Johnny Ive was intrinsically good at design. And you can see that because he hasn't done anything since he left Apple.
They had armies of designers. I met them. They would sometimes leave, and I meet them at Facebook. And they were very well respected at Apple. They would rarely leave.
I'm not saying they weren't respected. I'm saying that the value that was created was not necessarily created by them, although they took credit for it.
But I don't disagree with that based on the type of people I met.
Getting back to this point, if you talk to people about running AI, so Josh Wolf has this thesis, Lux Capital VC, that 50% of inference is going to happen locally. Okay. I am doing inference locally on my MacBook Pro. It's a $6,000 computer. That is where Apple is going to make money because Apple makes like 30% gross margins on this computer. They charge a ridiculous amount of money for their RAM. And that's what we're going to. So like, I would not be surprised if we saw the next version of the MacBook Pro or whatever it is with a terabyte of RAM. Or
that'd be sick.
Memory.
But that would take a few years. Like if
I don't know.
Deciding now, it'll be like 2030 when they like actually make the hardware changes.
I don't think that that's true. So the Apple, I don't think that it would be that hard for Apple to go from 128 gigabytes to a terabyte. I'm just saying that it's within
on chip. On chip.
No, like in the laptop.
Oh.
Or with like a code.
But their big thing is they have this massive VRAM, right? That's what you need.
Okay, listen. There's lots of ways to do what I'm going to say high bandwidth memory, but I don't mean just high bandwidth memory. There's many ways to put more memory on a chip. Apple has really great chip stuff. They're continuing to do M&A with chips. It started with PA Semiconductor, and then they made the M series and blah blah blah.
But still, if they decide now, it's still a year for them to actually, at least a year cycle minimum, but probably a year to design and then a year to ship on the next cycle.
Let's
2 years.
Let's suppose that Scoble and all these people were talking about how Apple was working on a skunkworks AI project for the last 2 years, and that after they launched the Vision, whatever, they realized that whatever they were going to do needed a lot more memory. So I'm just saying, like, I don't necessarily think they're going to launch a 1 terabyte thing soon, but it would not surprise me if Apple comes out and says, like, hey guys, we built a new laptop architecture that is based off the M design chip, and for $8,000 you can buy a 1 terabyte laptop.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's what they should have decided to do in 2023 when GPT-4 came out.
Yeah.
And it'd be 2 years later now, and they would already have it shipping.
Correct.
Instead, they were like fucking around.
No, I mean, like, and from Apple's perspective is there's a quality, like a quality component. Memory has been something that's constrained. And then the other thing is that you need all the software to work. So what I would say is, if they made that decision in 2023, it would make sense that we would get it this year or next year.
That's the 3 years that I was saying. Yeah.
And that before doing that, you want to run out the S curve on your previous S curve, like the previous architecture, right? So question there.
Yeah.
And then you would want to see, hang on a second, you would want to see.
If they were smart, they would be doing this and releasing it in the next few months. I agree.
Yes. And you would want to see the software integration, like MLX. You would want to see that it's really stable and it really works really well.
Yeah, they've had the pieces for a while. I mean, they could have, like if they were really smart, they would have decided this in 2020, and then it would have been ready with GPT-4 by already with all these pieces.
No, I don't.
I've been talking about edit AI for decades. Like,
I don't think that between the car and the glasses,
the car, exactly, the car.
Between the car, they had a lot of these kind of projects that were not in their wheelhouse, because like Apple designing a car is not in their wheelhouse, and I don't understand what the glasses thing was all about, but let's just set that aside for a moment.
Exactly.
I think that making a laptop with 1 terabyte of RAM is right up their alley. Whereas making an entirely
totally, but that's why they should have been ready 2 years ago to launch it. Like, why did they even have to wait to see that? Like,
I understand, and I'm trying to explain. Like, I think that Apple will eventually figure out that if they, because think about it this way.
No, but I'm saying the same thing is true of Google. Google literally invented transformers and all this stuff. They literally saw GPT-3 and 4. They literally should have within months had an equivalent system. Instead, it took them 2 years to get something as good.
No. The issue with Google is that if they were to capitalize on what they discovered themselves, it would have cannibalized their entire business. So the search business is in trouble. Right. So
but Google, but even without releasing it to on their homepage, which they're doing now because it's good enough, they could have had a ChatGPT equivalent within months.
I understand, but it's hard to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. So Google is like, should we throw away $80 billion a year in revenue for $10 billion a year in revenue?
It's the innovator's dilemma. It's innovator's dilemma. I understand.
Yes. Yeah. So Google has an excuse. I think Apple's issue is they went on this quest to find the next iPhone or iPad or Apple Watch or whatever.
And they had it all along.
And yes. And really what they needed to do was just put like a fuckload of memory in a laptop and be like, hey, run all your AI inference locally. So here's the thing. Who could compete with Apple to run inference locally? The only company that could do it would be NVIDIA, and NVIDIA announced that they're doing it. So I'm just saying, like, it makes sense.
NVIDIA, maybe Samsung, they make a lot of chips also. So this article is about NVIDIA announcing it.
I agree.
I agree with you that these companies shouldn't be announcing things. It kind of kills things in the cradle, because these companies, like, they get a bunch of press because they announce it, and so now they own the whole idea space. Yeah. And so anybody who's trying to start a company, they're like, wait, NVIDIA's already doing that. They're shipping in like a day.
Well, that's kind of like,
and then they can never raise money, because it's like, no, these guys are doing it. Even though they're doing nothing, they could just sit on this idea for years.
Yeah,
but they own the marketing. Any journalist you talk to is like, wait, NVIDIA's doing that, and they're like, no, you can't order it. It's like, what do you mean? Like, oh yeah, like it's just completely. I'm seeing this with like Spotify as well. Spotify's doing that. It's like, no, they're not. No one's, or like Apple has FaceTime SharePlay. Like, it's like play to listen to music. I literally ask people, like, does anyone use it? No. Like, I ask people, no one's using it. Like, I ask people Apple, no one's using it.
Yeah. So again, this is a very like common tactic for large companies. Microsoft pioneered it in the 90s. I think people are wising up to this idea that it's a paper horse or whatever. It's like not a thing.
Are they? I haven't seen it yet, but
Well,
here's
not in music, but
because it takes over press. It's like it's not even a. It just seems like it's just.
again,
It
I
looks like
don't
a
think
legitimate. It looks
so.
legitimate.
Again, press is an interesting thing, right? Because now the influencers are taking over traditional press. So it's taking over traditional press, but
That's true.
influencer press is kind of like these guys are full of shit. They never actually ship something.
That's a good point.
And so
Yeah.
people go to the influencers because they're more authentic and they're more
Mhm.
correct than the traditional press. So the traditional press would be like, oh, well, Apple's doing it. And the influencer's like, yeah, man, Apple announced it, but NVIDIA announced it and Google announced it. And every time they announce something that's not actually available to ship, it's actually not, it's a good indicator that they'll never ship. It's basically like if you pre-announce a product as a large company, you will never ship that product if it gets above, like a certain level.
You think it reduces your chance of shipping
Yeah.
it?
Remember how
you don't
Apple,
think NVIDIA will never ship digits?
here's a great example. Apple pre-announced Apple Intelligence. Did they ever ship Apple Intelligence? No, they did not.
They haven't
Right?
shipped it? I thought it was in
No.
iOS 18. I have no idea. Like I'm not
No,
even I'm like hoping they don't.
That's exactly right. Nobody wants it. They didn't do it. I mean,
they announced it because the pushback is so bad.
Yeah, well, they announced it,
wanna-
and then
I
they
wanna-
might have shipped something that's called Apple Intelligence, but it's not the vision that they outlined.
That's
And so
true. It
you're
wasn't
like,
what's
is
in the
it really
video.
the thing
Yeah,
that
that's
they
true.
did? No,
Yeah.
and kind of like Google did the same thing.
Google,
with
the Google
Wave.
video. Yeah.
Like Google Wave.
Well, that's because they all have an incentive for their marketing departments to just lie about what they can do, right? Because it's a marketing person making the video, right? And they don't have an idea what it works or like.
Again, there's an enterprise value conversation here. So ultimately, it gets back to the large cap tech companies. Their entire incentive model is structured around market cap because they take 0% loans against their stock positions.
Yeah.
Not against net income. So they don't.
It's unfair. These small companies can't.
They actually don't care about making money. They just need to justify their market cap. So it's a very weird situation.
It's not a fair playing field, especially for countries and other countries' companies. I want to link this other article that I thought was really interesting. It's like, why do we build all this capitalism, even all this AI, so that we don't have friction in our lives? Like one tap order, I can just have food on my door. I don't have to interact with anyone. But that reduces friction. But friction is what makes life happen. Interesting, right? It's like friction, like going out, meeting people, right? Discovering people that are going to be part of your life. Like, getting negative emotions triggered sometimes, and then figuring out where that's coming from and all that. Like, I think that's an interesting essay.
All right, everybody read it. I probably have to go at the top of the hour.
Okay, I have to go. It's time ending the stream. Goodbye,
everyone.
See you next week.